Yeah.
It's preparing to live stream. It's doing a little bar.
Excellent.
Crawl and cry. And each one of us should probably at random points just glance at the comments here and there
Hmm.
because we're gonna have to look at it separately from the Zoom.
Right.
Okay. Waiting for New World Chaos. Why does it say waiting?
It tells me we're live on my end. It looks like we're live.
Oh yeah.
We might,
Hi. I think we're live.
yeah, I think we are. I didn't want
Let's.
to talk too soon.
There's a delay on YouTube, so we're testing. Bear with us.
Yep. Welcome everybody to New World Chaos, new podcast, episode 1 officially. We're rocking and rolling with it.
Let me do a test to see if we're at the right point. We
Oh,
have no viewers yet, so we're good.
I'm pretty sure we're live. We can, because it says so on the Zoom. I got that Stevie Wonder song stuck in my head. Higher Ground.
Oh.
World, just keep turning. So it won't be too long now. I'm waiting for you to give me the go ahead to do the intro.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
go.
okay.
Well,
Because you were like, "Are we actually live or not?"
yeah. Okay, the test. We are
Is
live now.
good.
There's about a minute delay, so but we're live.
Right.
So hello, New World. We're chaos. This is Nemo. I'm
Hi.
Jeff.
That's
Nemo,
right.
take it away.
Yeah. We're just starting this new podcast, and it's very experimental. The pieces are coming together on their own. We are inviting, as we describe it, survivors or dissenters of social justice, people that are having negative experiences with that. And we're inviting you to join us at this crossroads to see what we could discover here. And not just to talk, but also see where we can build things. So this is very community oriented. Jeff and I are very inspired by community building and seeing what philosophies and values would actually really work for our hero's journey. So there's a lot of interweaving themes here. Um, yeah, I don't know. Jeff, do you want to add anything?
No, that sounds about right. We're uh, the anti-social justice crowd, the independence, autonomy, self-determination crowd. I'm a peer, so the mental health and peer support crowd, the neurodiversity crowd. Anybody who really is looking for something different or a new community.
Yeah,
This is all experimental, so we don't really know where it's going yet either. Just come
yeah.
along for the ride.
We're blindfolded and we're stepping forward, or we're doing the cha-cha, 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Yep, right off of that cliff, like the food.
Yeah, I tell people if I'm going to spend my whole life taking steps forward and backward, it'll just look like I'm dancing.
And we may have a guest join us, Aaron Kinsvater from University of Vermont. So
Hmm.
until he shows up, we'll just chat about what we usually chat about.
Pretty
And I think
much.
Nemo had something to share, and then I'll share after that.
Yeah, you want me to go first?
Sure, with
Okay.
the book and the
Yeah,
map.
before I do my share, I just wanted to throw it out there. We'll maybe say a few things here and there as reminders. So people start to get to know our show. Show is not strictly tied to being anti-social justice, or that's not the main focus. It's an element that we're referencing, and both Jeff and I have strong disagreements with social justice. We tend not to get along with that ideology very well. We've had very negative experiences, and we're in a growing community of people who've had really negative experiences with that. But there my hope is that this podcast isn't rigid, unless in the very, very few circumstances where it needs to be, maybe. But yeah, we want it to be flexible and open to those possibilities for new philosophies, finding new stuff out there. But uh, the thing I was going to share, so there's something called self-determination theory, and not a lot of people know about it. Jeff and I have talked about it quite a lot since we met, and a lot of people in my direct vicinity know that I talk a lot about it. But for people who've never heard of this, I'll give you the quick rundown. Human beings have three universal needs. The first is autonomy. So you are the person who makes choices of your own life. You have the space and the ability, the environment to be able to make those choices. And then you have competence is the second need. And that just, to me, that means you have skills, knowledge, wisdom, and you develop those things to be able to take on the challenge and the difficulty of life. And the third is interconnection. So you have mutually supportive, respectful, healthy relationships. And the beauty of self determination that I've discovered is that it's not just a checklist of these three needs, but they're actually like primary colors. And when you start to develop each of them, they connect with each other and they have an influence and they start to intermingle. And together, the magic of that is like a chemical reaction almost. And it brings us into this state of life that we call self determination. And it's almost like a drug trip. It's almost like a psychedelic trip. It's so different. It's physically different. Your vision is the way you see things, the associations, the things that are most valuable to you. It can all change. And so, I guess the thing I'm going to share today, I had some breakthroughs in my own research with this, and there are these nonprofit programs that I've worked for. And I'm a youth mentor advocate. I'm in that world a lot. I've dealt with a lot with homeless issues and what people typically call poverty, like financial poverty. And I've discovered some really disturbing corruption in these programs. That's really, really some of the worst I've ever seen. And social justice plays a huge role in that. But it's also beyond that. And what I'm finding, I'm going to try and share maybe the shortest version of this revelation. This is a work in progress. This map that I'm building that measures where people are in terms of independence and empowerment. So you have people that cross a threshold of independence. And when you're on the other side of this, you tend to keep going up. So you build on your own momentum of your own empowerment. So you have natural upward mobility and you can exponentially grow that. If you're below that threshold, you have downward mobility. So there's this pressure or this magnetism that's continuing to pull you down because you just haven't gotten enough of your own foundation together to change that direction around. And so the further you are below this threshold towards like what we call the bottom, if there is any, the more difficult it is for anyone to help you, be it your friends, your family, or a program. And the programs I've been working for and these really national movements, and even in potentially other countries, they tend to focus on the people who have it worst. And those are the people that are the hardest to help. And their burdens are so heavy that they often just destroy the program. And so I was looking at some of the questions I'm starting to find some answers for of how do we have some tools and building blocks to get from these states of disempowerment and start building towards empowerment. And one of the answers is that we have to start with the people that are actually closest to the threshold of independence because those are the easiest to help. It's completely counterintuitive. Not only are they the easiest to help, they're in a vulnerable position. If we don't help those people and we focus at the bottom, we're setting the safety net so low that it's almost like you imagine a person falling off a building. By the time they hit the safety net, they're basically broken. And the whole pool of people that are below this threshold are moving down, and then towards the bottom, it's getting larger, and the programs are being destroyed at the same time. It's a catastrophe. It's almost like the Overton window of empowerment or disempowerment is shifting itself and the entire spectrum is moving down because these programs, as I'm finding, are not just accepting the applicants towards the very bottom, because they're offering resources and opportunities. Their program has a magnetic pull, so it's actively encouraging people to be pulled downward. And when you say you have to have it bad enough, then people learn to value victimhood and having it bad enough, whatever that means, and they will seek those things out, they will mimic it, they will make themselves look bad enough that they can get accepted to the programs. So it really is creating a whole victimhood meritocracy. And what I'm researching now and I'm going really deep on is how do we do basically the exact opposite of this. And we form our little island of self-determination. We have our little ship that can survive the storm, and we can pull people aboard, the right people that won't sink the ship, and we can shift the downward mobility around into moving upwards. So that's what I'm diving into. It's just crazy big thing. It's huge. It's oh my god. It's hard to be succinct in that stuff. Jeff's a great listener.
No, I think you did a great job. It overlaps with the same thing I'm trying to do in my peer work and my community building work. Self empowerment is really at the core of what I do as a peer. If someone comes to me, the first thing I'm going to do is help them use their personal history and the coping skills they've developed to figure out ways they can handle the situation on their own. What can they do in this situation for
Mm.
themselves? And one thing I run into often is I know it as the victim triangle, and it's the you have a victim, a rescuer, and a perpetrator that they're rescuing the victim from. And that's the victim dynamic that I see the most in my work. And when I do try to self-empower somebody caught in that victim triangle dynamic, I meet a lot of resistance. Um, I'm not codependent myself, but I run into codependent people a lot that are identified as codependent and are working on codependence. And I see that that's what it looks like to me. What they're calling codependence looks like this victim, rescuer, perpetrator triangle. And then I somehow become the perpetrator in this dynamic when I attempt to help the victim self empower, which is one of the core principles of our peer support. It's written into the framework of what we do as peers. So I'm not doing anything unusual as a peer by doing that, but I become the perpetrator. And there always seems to be a rescuer that steps in and kind of protects the victim or defends the victim and helps them to resist what I'm trying to do as a peer and reframes it as the perpetrator. I become the bad guy or the big scary person that's trying to push them past their comfort zone to self-empower. So it's kind of that rising sinking thing that you talked about. And I think what I'm realizing is I'm trying to help people that are at that lower level that you described, because when I do work with people that are a little more comfortable or are used to the idea of self-empowerment, I don't run into that dynamic as much. So that fits with what
Yeah,
you're saying as well.
yeah, I can see that. It's interesting that the person in a more dependent or victimhood mindset is perceiving your responses as authoritarian, you could say, when you're trying to encourage the exact opposite, autonomy. And so
Yeah.
it seems like something's getting subverted there because, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's because they maybe have everything flipped, maybe from childhood or whatever experiences led them to this victimhood experience, that it seems like people are getting tricked, where their experience of victimhood is being labeled as autonomy, and that's what they cling to. So then when they perceive you as a threat to their victimhood, they actually confuse it as a threat to their autonomy because they're in this such a disempowered state where all these labels and concepts are attached to the wrong actual experiences. So the language is getting totally disconnected from the real experience, and it's a huge mess.
It feels like a huge mess. I've learned to step away and kind of leave them alone, and that they're not. I try to meet people where they are, and I'm not always able to meet those people where they are. So I step back and
Yeah.
help them find someone who can. But the healthy version of the triangle, as it was presented to me, instead of a victim, you have a person suffering or a person in pain. The rescuer, you have someone who cares. And the perpetrator is someone who's assertive. And that's
Mm.
a healthier version of that triangle dynamic. And so that's the one I
Yeah.
try to keep in mind when I'm working with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so powerful because you're offering an empowered or healthier version of each of those roles, and you're not just like say discarding one of them. You could make the case for totally discarding any one of the negative forms of those roles. Oh, you shouldn't be a savior. Well, it's not good to be a victim. Well, you definitely don't want to be a perpetrator. Well, now what do? I got nothing. So if you give people alternatives, then they start to see what's out there, and then however it hits them and however they react, I guess you just got to see how it goes. And yeah, yeah, my therapist said this to me once 6 months ago. I kind of was getting deeper into how I want to change the way I've been responding to some things, and one of the things about me is that for so long I tried to find some creative way to make it work, to like build a community, something, build a group, start a band, and it just something. But like I found that I more and more I was doing this thing, I call it covering the gap. So there's this gap between me and other people, and I was like, okay, so they're less capable or they're just not willing. Most of the time it's that they're very apathetic. So I see capability in them, but they're just like devaluing their experiences. They don't see the value of it, and it's just a struggle. And maybe like when we first have that one connection, they're like really excited. They're like, yeah, this is the very thing I wanted. So of course I'm going to say, well, you should come aboard and we should do this because you clearly seem excited and you want to do it. I wouldn't just offer the starting a community with anybody and, hey, everybody come around. Let's have a big party. Social justice warriors, the homeless guy there, and this guy and that guy. And I'm going to be a little more discerning. And, but, Jeff, you're a little
Tend to
frozen.
do
I
that.
don't, okay.
You froze up a little bit, so
Yeah, okay,
if you
so
could
maybe
go
one
back
of
up,
us
or
did.
I froze up. Yeah, I
Maybe we
think I
both
froze up.
did. We're back though. Moral of the story though, uh, I'm often trying to cover this gap with people. They act like they want to be a part of something. So I'm like, okay, you seem like the best person I have available, so let's do it. And then nope, there's this huge gap. They're apathetic. They fail to show up. They don't even care. They don't do anything, or they just sabotage whatever. And my therapist said, stop covering the gap. And I said, if I do that, then a whole bunch of people are going to fall flat on their face and I'm going to be miserable because I'm going to be surrounded by that. And she's going to be like, or she said, yeah, Nemo, just see what happens. And when I started doing that like more effectively, the people that really were ready and mattered the most immediately stepped up to their higher selves. And the people that were the most destructive and were the wrong people immediately revealed that. And then everyone in between kind of in between. And if you don't cover the gap, then you see what's happening under the surface in reality.
Yep, I like that, and it kind of matches my recent experiences with the
Mm.
same dynamic.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like I mean without I won't specify. I'll leave that up to you, your discretion, but it sounds like with the experiences that you've talked about with me that uh one of the big ones that there were things that were not as obvious or apparent, but it happened over time and then it revealed itself later.
And I don't always pick up on things
Mm.
as quickly as other people. I'm on the autism spectrum, and a lot of the more subtle things it takes me a while to pick up on. I think other people were picking up quicker
Mhm.
than I was, but once I saw it clearly. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I tend to be more. Inc- I idealize people. I take people at their best. I'm very strengths based, so I tend
Mm.
to be inclusive and welcoming of many different types, and I take them at face value. And so I learned later down the road. I start noticing all the things that maybe I should have picked up on before I was so open.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. It's so funny you say that because I'm not on the spectrum. If I was, I've been to many different therapists, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So surely they would have told me by now. But I'm not on the spectrum. And to some extent, I like to think I have some pretty decent social skills that most people don't have. I'm a decent writer and speaker, and I've been able to adapt as a person that's very, very different from this world. But a lot of the time, other people around me just think I'm like totally oblivious and I kind of suck at certain things. And to some extent, I think that both are true. It's like I'm good and bad at the same time because I'm very different. So trying to figure out how to navigate that's really hard because what's going to make sense for me is not going to make sense for a lot of people. And it's just like you were saying, you were given advice years ago that just that you would connect with 2% of the population, and you should only focus on that 2%. So just kind of embrace your nicheness, your obscurity. And
That,
I mean, on some basic levels, I can definitely tell that I'm oblivious to certain things, just like you described. But sometimes those things seem like they don't matter, and it's just that that's what the average person struggles with. A lot of it's like the little voice in the head. Like I'll be with a friend that has anxiety, and I don't, never really experienced it. Kind of like, okay, but hey, I understand it's a very difficult thing for other people, and I'm learning about that. And this friend also happens to be a woman. I don't know to what degree that changes our perspectives, but we'll meet up with someone she hadn't seen in a long time, and then they're all like, "Oh, hi. Oh, okay. Oh, wow. And you got a dog now, and how's the baby?" And I'm just kind of like, and then it's over, and we walk away. And my friend says to me, "Did you see when she was lifting her eyebrows? She clearly was lying, and she doesn't give a shit." And I'm like, I thought she was just lifting her eyebrows. I don't.
yeah,
So they're adding all this meaning to it that's not there. And it was so bad when I was in this like social justice cult and my last job, that was a big mess. And because there was all these little extra things, and I'm just like,
yeah.
what are you talking about?
That happens with me too, and especially on Zoom. Like even little technological glitches, like Zoom will kick somebody off or their computer, and she just signed off of Zoom. She's mad at me. Is she upset? No, Zoom probably just dropped her. No, I think that, or if I sign off of Zoom, I'll get a message. Are you mad at me? You signed off quickly. So it's even stuff like that. Things that are attributed that I would attribute to technology, people interpret as personal,
Yeah,
and my mind just wouldn't think to go there. Like I wouldn't think that somebody was mad at me
same.
because Zoom kicked them off. If they came back and told me Zoom kicked me off, that would end it right there. But it's like they doubt. There's this doubt. Well, did Zoom really kick them off, or are they mad at me?
Yeah.
Well, they just told you Zoom kicked them off, but they still, that narrative still keeps going, and it's all based on these little subtle things that I don't notice.
Yes. On our what we're now calling episode 0, that's on the channel, that was made before the podcast really officially existed. I rewatched a little. I was kind of skimming around it recently, kind of rewatching it, and what was the point? You reminded me of just now. These subtle little things. Now I'm losing it. You said something, but you said that it's you feel that it's impossible to be anxious or depressed while you're creative or learning. Does that sound
It is
right?
for me.
Yeah. So I have this kind of part of my life philosophy that I've noticed, and I think that there's therapists have said things like this. I'm just saying it in my own words, but that if you know you have all this energy, ideally you have energy. If you're in it, and in your decent health. I actually had chronic fatigue for a long time, so I didn't have energy, but different story. In a decent state, basic, fundamental human being, you got all this energy throughout your day to do things with it. And if you don't have good places to fuel the energy, you start to build these habits where your energy just goes to wherever the default is. So if you got nothing, you maybe just reach for your phone and play phone games. Now you're a phone game addict or whatever it is. And I find that some of my friends that have anxiety just have this long habit because of trauma, things related to that, of some part of their energy going into this excessive thinking. And the feeling with it is just this pent up, nasty energy that hasn't been released. So the thinking part doesn't make any sense because what's actually happening is physical, and me and you encounter it, and our energy is often, we try to fuel it into good things, and it's a physical experience. So then when we encounter a person that's stuck in that, the thinking part, it's like our brains collide and they're like, you make no sense. And, and that's where we are. I don't know if you've noticed things like that.
That sounds right to me. I I guess anxiety is a form of energy, or can appear to be a form of energy that's channeled in. I mean, they certainly seem energetic when they're anxious. It seems like there's a lot of excitability and
Yeah.
stimulation. I have a
Yeah.
ton of energy. I always have. I'm hyperactive. I'm nuclear powered. I go all day long, and um,
Hmm.
I I can do and go and do and projects and this and that and that. So I'm constantly trying to channel that energy somewhere.
Yeah. I've been realizing my high energy and passion feels like anxiety to people that have anxiety. And that's one of the things I've run into. In fact, that has been had a huge detriment when I've had conflicts with social justice warriors because they often have a lot of anxiety. Well, and anxiety is really common, social justice is really common. Surely there's a lot of people that are experiencing both of those at the same time. And I wouldn't be surprised if social justice is making them more anxious because, well, for one, the
Well,
environment I was in that I would call a cult, like I am pretty on the extreme end of not experiencing anxiety. A lot of people say, "Hey, Nemo, you seem pretty confident," and I'm just like, I don't really have a need for that. It's a weird way of relating to it, but like you need it if you don't have it. You're like, I need it, and then if you have it, I guess you don't need it. But when I was in that environment, I could tell, even in my like extreme state, being disagreeable, just being like annoyed and bored and sometimes disgusted by what I was seeing around me, that most people in those environments would just be fearful and anxious and confused and lost because you're not really, once it gets too bad, you're not in those environments, you're not allowed to ask what the rules of the cult are out loud because you can't say it by name because then you're breaking the fantasy. So then you sort of just have to follow the rules and then pretend they don't exist. So people be following the rules. Oh, we're all supposed to be racist in this particular way against white men or whatever. But nobody can say that. And if somebody says that, oh, we're all supposed to be. So like, even if I was naive and I'm like, I just want to follow the cult rules, I would say, hey, I'd be in a group meeting. I didn't actually do this, but hypothetical, ridiculous example, me being naive in this fake group meeting, I might say, so are we all supposed to say white men are at the bottom of the hierarchy here? And everyone's gonna be like, what are you talking about? Clearly they're at the top of the hierarchy and they have everything. And I'm just like, this is confusing. And for anybody that has any insecurity and discomforting energy stuck in them, and they're just not rock solid, they're very shaky, then they're going to be miserable in those environments. And yet they stay in those environments. It's a lot of the time. It's crazy to me.
that's the thing I can't do. It feels oppressive to like worry, tiptoe around language and the right pronoun and the right word and the right phrasing and what to do and not do. And those, I avoid environments like that because they feel so oppressive. And with the autism, I'm not going to figure them out anyway. But it's interesting what you say about people reading your passion as anxiety or your passion making other people anxious, because I pick up on other people's anxiety all the time. I'm a hyper empath. I'm not anxious myself, but if somebody around me starts getting really anxious, I'm going to start getting anxious for hours and hours
Mm.
afterwards. And I'm also a very passionate person, and I'm wondering if people that are prone to anxiety experience my passion as anxiety. And my I make people anxious all the time, and it's
Mm.
usually because I'm excitable, I'm passionate, I'm emotional. I'm not anxious, but I'm in a heightened state a lot of times, and that causes anxious people to experience that as anxiety, and I pick up on their anxiety, and then I become anxious. So I wonder if there's what's normal for me is being experienced as anxiety by people with different nervous systems, and then my nervous system in return responds with anxiety to the anxiety of other people, so that these perhaps incompatibilities start to create a feedback loop back and forth.
Yeah. I think part of what you and me are picking up on here is that I'm starting to sense that a lot of people with anxiety, that it's almost like they're projecting, I guess you could say. Or I mean, maybe it's not intentional necessarily, but they experience the energy we have through only that one lens, anxiety. And I think sometimes that is because a person doesn't understand what it's like to experience that heightened energy or their vulnerability, in other ways besides anxiety. So a lot of people resist vulnerability as a whole because they don't know how to experience it in a positive way or in a neutral way. And yeah, so I like meditation and certain types of trauma therapy, certain like physical practices can all really help, I find. And one of my friends that has pretty common and high anxiety is becoming more aware of that in himself. He's actually a pretty wise person. He's one of my closest friends. He's one of the few people that has survived all the crazy ups and downs of my life. And he's a nurse, so like he's got to take on big responsibilities. And yet, one of the things he struggles with is high anxiety. And one time, one of our friends brought over some special cookies, and we danced with Mary Jane. And I was already like almost gone. I'm very sensitive to that stuff, so I got to be like, okay, I'm taking you give a mouse a cookie, this is a mouse-sized cookie, and that's all I'm taking, and then I'm done. So I was already basically gone. This is my visual representation of me being gone. And I remember this tunnel vision of him taking a whole cookie. And what it turned into was me, apparently, I don't remember most of this. I basically babysat him the rest of the night. And he was like in this crazy forest with all of these. Oh my God, I can't even do this. His mind put him in a forest with Aztec chickens.
Okay.
It was so random, and that's how his anxiety represented. And apparently, I was just helping guide him through it of like, what's in the forest? Tell me. And he learned so much. Oh my God. I don't know why that was just really funny to me. But he's just kind of figuring it out. He's starting to learn about that energy, that it doesn't, and that vulnerability. It doesn't always have to be bad, even if it's goofy or even embarrassing. It's just you can laugh about it.
From the people I've talked to that deal with anxiety, um, I ask them what you do. Like, what can I, how can I help other people with anxiety? And they talk about stuff like mindfulness, meditation, grounding techniques. There's somatic techniques that they use. So I'd be interested more in what what helps people with anxiety. Like, what are the coping skills they use to manage anxiety? And also, what can I do other than change who I am at the core of my being? Like, I can't be any less intense or make my emotion be at any less level than it manifests, which is usually what they seem to ask of me or require of me. But what can I do to help someone with anxiety, if anything? I'd be interested in knowing that from, if there are any people with anxiety watching and you want to type something in the comments or interact. That's one
Yeah.
thing I ask people with anxiety all the time because I'm interested in knowing how to help someone with anxiety when I don't experience it myself. But I seem to trigger in other people often, and I seem to catch it from other people, like pick up on it when other people are anxious.
Yeah, I can empathize. I have a similar issue. I've been working on this with myself. I really am, and I've been doing this for years now, and it's just like this very piecemeal, one step at a time kind of a process to discover some of those things that you're talking about. And I think meditating myself is making it so that I'm able to be with more people in more ways, and it's making it easier for them to be with me. And it depends on the person. You're never going to be able to be that person for everyone.
Yeah.
But I mean, even if you just you could try meditation, or you could figure. I think there's an abundance of physical practices that are not for you.
I'm not disciplined enough. I have active
Ah,
meditations. I reading is meditative for me. I do jigsaw
yeah,
puzzles, logic puzzles. They all put my mind in that different state. I use music a lot,
sure.
hiking. I have active ways that substitute for meditation for me, or active forms of meditation that do that shift in consciousness that relax my brain.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah, fair enough. In my experience, then, me slowing down and saying less and adding less of my, I'm just not always, I'm at a point now where I'm just not always going to bring the passion and everything that's in me and just put it out there, but also it can even be as simple as I'm being aware when I arrive to a room, and let's say there's a whole bunch of us there, and we're all going to interact, and we're all just kind of arriving. Um, I get very excited. I'm very extroverted. I'm basically like a puppy in a dog park, and everybody kind of is aware of this, and they think I'm goofy. Some people even think I'm high. They're like, "Dude, you seem zooted. You seem okay." But anyways, but I still try. I'm trying to kind of play with that and temper it and say like, I'm just kind of like gonna chill out too and try that out and just like it's almost like you're sinking into how you are now and you're relaxing with it. Even if it seems really high energy, it almost seems contradictory. And that's what these practices help me do, is that I'm just relaxing with what I am and where I am here and now, even if it's high energy or whatever. And it adds another layer, this extra space. And then I try to listen deeply to other people
Mhm.
and kind of continue to, they call it holding space. And it's funny that you kind of struggle with that because you're a really good listener. So that's,
I don't have a slow setting. Like, first of all, I don't see any reason to like. That's how I am. Take me as I am.
mm-hmm.
If there's nothing wrong with the level of energy that I bring to a situation, if you have a problem with it, there's nothing I need to do on my end to make you be able to tolerate me more. So
Right.
I like passionate people. I like people with energy. I'm an extrovert too. Like it doesn't bother me to have people around like you with a lot of energy that's hyper and social, and so I enjoy that. I wouldn't ask those people to change themselves, and I'm not gonna tamp myself. If I have to tamp my energy down to be with someone, that's probably not the right person for any kind of long term
Yeah.
connection anyway.
Mhm.
So I don't have a slow setting. I don't know how to do that. I do it as
Yeah.
best I can when I need to, I guess, but it's very minimal.
Right.
I'm not big on masking. I didn't. I don't mask as an autistic person. I didn't mask as a gay person. Like I think it's more mentally healthy to live openly, however you are, as your
Mhm.
authentic self. It's a lot less stressful for me.
Yeah.
So I don't think the slow like I know that is grounding what you described, and I can ground, but I ground in the energy. Like you said, the energy
Mhm.
doesn't
Yeah.
reduce. I'm just more stabilized within it, but that doesn't mean everybody else around me is stabilized with it.
Yeah,
It's
it's
often destabilizing, especially for introverts or people from other cultures.
mhm. Right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense, and I think that goes pretty much in line with what I'm saying. It's more of just you and I and other people. Every person has their different variety of how they want to meditate or what practices they want to do, and it's to me it's just a different flavor of the same thing ultimately. Then you say that you can ground within the energy, and that's often I do the same thing basically. So I still have a lot of high energy in a lot of situations with people, and but if I'm in a place where I'm being grounded and more present and here and now, then I have both of those components. It's like I can be up in outer space, but I'm still kind of tethered to Earth at the same time.
Yeah,
It's hard
yeah.
to it's hard to balance those. It
It
seems
kind of just all
contradictory.
integrates together in me, just internally. It forms
Mhm.
its own whole inside. But
Yeah,
if my energy is not your cup of tea, that's fine. That's okay. There's nothing I can do or even need to do to
yeah,
make it be your cup of tea. We can just acknowledge that and work with what we have.
yeah. I wonder. I wouldn't be surprised if those issues come up mostly in person when you have the anxiety loop between you and others. Because I'm just taking a guess here. Well, not only is like in person way more sensitive to that than like online on a camera or whatever, but just like how I know you and your mannerisms so far, I don't get like a strong sense of like crazy energy from you. It's like it's not like you're Jim Carrey here. I think
I
you
don't think
do a
I
lot
am.
of great
I
things.
mean, I can get excitable when I'm stimulated by a topic or a discussion, or when I'm emotionally agitated. I have PTSD, so I have fight or flight triggers. I have autism. There's meltdowns and tantrums. So there are peaks to my energy that I can hit, but for the most part, I don't think I'm that. Back home in Louisiana, I'm the quiet one. Like people around have way more energy than I do. So I think a lot of it is cultural. When I moved to the Pacific Northwest, my energy stood out more, but I didn't change anything. I was the same
Yeah,
person that came from Louisiana.
I can see that.
But I've
Yeah.
been Zooming since COVID. I've been Zooming for a year. I don't do anything social in person. And it still happens. Everything that's happened the last year has happened
Mhm.
on Zoom and online. And it still happens. Like if I'm in a group on a Zoom and the discussion gets heated or passionate or escalated, it can come across and people have a similar response even in a Zoom group. It's even happened on Discord through text. People accuse me of being too worked up or too excitable, too, and it's just text on a screen. How do they know what emotion I'm feeling from reading my text? But somehow, like the gist of my energy comes through even in the way things are typed on a screen or people are interpreting that way.
Yeah.
So it has the
It's
same effect even if it's not in person and even if it's not visual.
Yeah, it's really fascinating, but I mean, everybody has their own unique experience of reality. And it's fascinating to me that so many people seem to be antagonized by subjectivity. Like I think almost like that's a desperate desire for empathy. So there's like people are deprived of empathy. If you have your need for empathy and you've been heard, you have the need for empathy met, and you get to vent and you got your close friends and you really have that connection and you do that regularly, then I think it's way easier to coexist. You just the people that are high strung on that tend to just be able to relax because they're not deprived. But I really think a lot of what we call, say, intolerance, it's almost like a person's just totally sick of everything because they haven't had their voice heard and haven't been empathized with. And yeah, I don't know. It's just a big mess. I find that most people I've met don't really listen most of the time to almost anything. That's one of the reasons I'm trying to be a good listener and keep onward on that path.
I don't know how to not listen. I'm too interested in people. They fascinate me. You bring up
That's amazing.
a good point though, and I just forgot what it was. I'll have to wait for it to loop back around.
Intolerance and empathy. People get sick of everything because they want
Oh
to be
yeah,
heard.
it has me wondering what kind of support system they have too. Because I have friends I can call when I need to vent or get stuff out or like manage my energy if it builds up, and I'm not isolated without other people I can interact with and kind of
Mhm.
have that balance and reciprocity spread out and kind of rebalance myself. It makes me wonder if they have a functional support system where they do have an outlet for their energy and are able to have people they can talk to or be themselves around. Maybe they're surrounded by people that have these expectations of them all the time and they don't have people they can get support for it from. So that's something to keep in mind too that I hadn't thought of.
Yeah. Yeah. Summary, I guess a lot of people are suffering. It seems like there's a lot of, I mean, think of how we started this podcast. Kind of, it's kind of a miracle almost that, I mean, because if you were told years ago that you would connect with 2% of the population, we can assume that I'm in the 2% you can connect with because me and you have a very natural connection. And it's like, and you've been telling me, it's like we're just holding our breath. I mean, I'm heavily paraphrasing here, but it's like you've just been waiting for the movement to explode and like all these people to start coming together and responding to social justice and doing something, whether it's good, bad, or the ugly. But uh, both of us are like looking around online in person, and it's just this weird, eerie silence. And we're just kind of like, when's this moment going to come together? So I don't know. At least we
Yeah,
got
it does seem like that to me. This weird eerie silence.
the eye of the storm,
I don't know.
maybe.
It seems like there's more momentum out there than is showing up in the spaces I'm in and the work I'm doing.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's in some ways it could be a blessing in disguise because, say, I'll give an example. I'm actually in the Twin Cities in Minnesota, it's Minneapolis and St. Paul, where the George Floyd thing happened. and um, and I don't care that that's public. I'm already kind of public anyways. Most people here that have canceled me, they already know. They know what's up. But uh, so I was really heavily involved in a police brutality support group that's been around for like 20 years here. It's amazing. They have this ordinariness, this humbleness. They do the daily work. They focus on what they can do. It's not sensational. It's not activists. It's like the opposite of that in a sense. And a lot of the people that founded it are kind of like these old hippie lefties. So we disagree on some things. We have our differences, whatever. But they're amazing people. And then George Floyd happened, and we're in the midst of this big thing we were working on around police brutality affecting people with mental illness or trauma. That's actually a really serious issue. People with that aren't able to restrain or refrain themselves are way more likely to be hurt by police. Nonetheless, we're working on this big thing. George Floyd explodes, and suddenly there's this wave of all these social justice activists and blah 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 people and political people, new and old, that they want to be the heroes. They want to take it on. They want to be forming the committee, and they were just so erratic and so desperate and so sensational and so I'm doing the selfies and getting famous kind of a thing that it was unsustainable. It was a fad. It was like in the grand scheme of history, most of those people will either be maybe unknown or some of them become like violent and just turn the George Floyd Memorial into a Chaz or whatever the hell's happening. And then there's our group that stayed steady and now it's like March 2021 and they're getting their stuff published, the reports they're doing, and they're getting politicians talking about making mental health and trauma support services as widely accessible as possible, tied in with police or as an alternate, so that it can buffer those issues. So that they're trying to find those real solutions. So I don't know. The moral of the story here is that it's sometimes things are a fad, and if me and you are in a quieter space, maybe we're the slow and steady. We're the tortoises, and we might find something that's cool. It's not famous. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
Is it mental health support for the cops that they're?
That is a thread that's forming, but there right now a lot of the big pieces are focused on the citizens that would be hurt by the police.
Oh,
And there are definitely people out there that are focusing on supporting the police as well. At least not necessarily it's not about whether they agree with the police or not. It's not like that kind of support, but it's police have jobs that are traumatizing and they have issues. It's very difficult. Clearly, something needs to be addressed here. Let's try to provide them therapy, mental health support,
yeah.
all that stuff. Whether you support, whether you agree with the police or not is somewhat irrelevant because these are issues that are happening.
I don't think police get nearly the support that they need to do their jobs. I'm all for getting more mental health support to the police, and I think police are necessary to society. I appreciate what they do.
It's very remarkable you say that as somebody that is so anti-authoritarian to the core.
Well, I'm also anti crime and savagery and degenerating to a more bestial condition than we live in currently as civilized people too. And I think the police help with that.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm
Hopefully,
practical too. I don't want to live in a
yeah.
anarchic, non-police. Like my experiences with the police have been more or less positive, which surprises me because I've been on the edge of that line most of my life. But I have police friends and friends of the family, and I have friends who I don't know. I don't have anything in my personal life to demonize the police over, and I can only speak from my own experience. But I see the value in it to
Yeah,
society.
sure. I have I tend to in the past for a very very long time I was just like did not support policing as a tool at all. So it's like the belief system of it, the methodology or whatever. So I was just not supportive whatsoever. And I was the same way about the government. And I've been moving on to different things I want to emphasize and different changes in my values. And um, at this point, I think there's certain things that where I see the suffering and the tragedy and the entanglement and how difficult it is to discover self-determination in that, and I just chalk those up to being unsolved issues essentially. And so I kind of see that with policing. I don't really know. I honestly I don't know what the future holds, and there's a lot of tragedy. And just for context, more personally, the Twin Cities has some of the most negative opinions of police in the country, and I think it's not just because of social justice. This is much that cultural phenomenon is much more wider spread than social justice here, and I think it's because the police here are very antagonistic to the people in our two cities. And I don't know why that stands out more than other major cities. But and we don't have the level of crime that certain pockets of like some major cities have that you could point to, like Chicago and Detroit and maybe Baltimore, as far as I've heard. So it's a weird disconnect. The police are so antagonistic. Like a lot of people I know personally have had bad interactions with police that are very, very tense and could have gone much worse. And I also know quite a few people that were victims or survivors. So that's
I've had
part
a
of the
few.
reason this stuff is exploding, that there's a backlash and social justice is taking advantage of that, is that it's this sort of, you could say, karma almost of like,
To me, it's a narrative. Though. Like I've had negative interactions with some police too. If you give me 100 cops, I'm gonna have 100 different types of interactions. Some will be positive, some will be negative. But I don't take the negative interactions and say all police are this because of these negative interactions. I've had just as many positive interactions. My last job as a disability advocate, I worked with the police department here. It was the precinct that the Chaz formed around, in fact, the East Precinct. We
mm,
worked on how we can help cops help people with autism and mental health conditions, and how we can create a bridge so that they're more understanding in their policing. And they bent over backwards to partner with us to help on this issue. I was so grateful and appreciative and impressed of how involved and helpful they were with this issue. So I had a wonderful experience working with them professionally on disability issues. Just like women, I've had issues with women my whole life. I have abuse from women as a child. And I don't think all women are one way because I've had traumatic experience with many, many, many women. I still give each new female that comes to my life a chance to be who they are as an individual. And I'm like that with, maybe I just think differently, but I don't tend
mm,
to draw conclusions about entire groups just based on the extreme experiences with members of that group or even statistical experiences. Like
yeah,
if I had bad experience with 9 cops, I wouldn't judge the 10th cop based on, not, I won't get, possibly Republicans, I won't get political, but that's because they have a voting trail you can look at. Like they consistently, all Republicans consistently take this action each time in their vote. So you can base it off of something like that. But even Republicans and Trump supporters, I think I would take on an individual basis. So maybe
yeah.
I struggle with groupthink in general
Hmm.
because I'm so individually oriented.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's not really my tendency either, and I don't emphasize it. I've noted, and I think I've actually gotten more refined in my ability to specify not falling into groupthink over the years, and that's one of the reasons. Say that in times when I was critical of policing, I'm separating the concept, the toolkit, however you want, the philosophy, whatever you want to call it, the concept of policing, I'm separating from the human beings that are filling individual roles. And I think that makes it easier for people to, if they need to criticize something, then they can get more to the heart of what they're trying to criticize. And then also switch modes and be able to see individuality, humanity in each of the people, it's very confusing with some of these things. And I think another one that was prominent for me was just with feminists, because like you, I've had some really terrible experiences. Not and mine are not with all women, like majority of women I've interacted with. For me, there's a lot more variety. I've had the good, the bad, and the ugly, but I've had almost entirely very negative experiences with feminist women. And male feminists, I don't really have much any experiences that are relevant to that topic. For whatever reason, it doesn't come up as much between me and like other guys if they happen to be into
Mhm.
that. But feminist women, I've had very, very negative experiences with going back to childhood. And so I'll never call myself a feminist. I think it almost feels like that it's immoral because that label has such a negative and terrible association that I also think it would be miscommunicating with people if I did. And but I have no interest in trying to change what a feminist believes or get her to stop being a feminist or anything like that. And so most of the time, honestly, that issue takes care of itself. I have no interest in deliberately saying I'll never interact with feminists. I want nothing to do with that. If I just encounter them everywhere because that's the culture here, and a lot of times before I know anything about this person, they'll lash out at me, or it happens
Yeah.
very quickly. And so like there's no reason for me to have any group judgment. Whatever is going to happen, I'll pick up on those things.
Yep. Similar here with um I mean, I have friends that are feminists. I support equality for women. I'm a humanist. I support all humans treating each other as human beings. I support
Mm-hmm.
equality for women. I don't know if that makes me a feminist or not. I know that most of the things I struggle with socially and culturally seem to originate from feminist thought and feminist norms and feminist
Mhm.
aspirations and ideology, and I fall on the wrong end of that a lot of times and get the same reactions from feminists. I've had really good, most of my close friendships are with women, and I've had really close female friends for years and years and years that the friendship has ended over feminist disagreements around feminist topics or values, and it caused the entire friendship to end. And I didn't
Yeah.
even see it coming.
Yep.
So I'm alert to feminism. I'm a masculinist. I men's movement, and I support masculinity. And if I have a bias at all, it's towards male. But I believe that we both have male, female. I, I guess maybe being autistic, I don't conceptualize gender the same way as most of society does. I have things that I can relate to that are mostly I observe in females, and there are things I relate to that I observe in males, but it's mapped differently inside of me, and I experience traits of both, and I try to integrate them within me into something larger than either. And so I don't approach gender in a very kind of rigid way of male female, but I definitely value men and support men, and I have much less issues with men. The communication difficulties don't show up with men as much. The autism, the stuff I don't pick up on with men seem to be less of a hindrance or a barrier than they do with women. If I miss or misread or pick up something super subtle or fail to pick up something with the female, it's going to cause catastrophe when males kind of just roll with it.
Yeah.
I feel more accepted by males than I do by women. I feel less judged by males than I do by women. I don't know how we got on that topic or where this is going, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't
I
have anything
mean,
against women, despite my difficulties with women most of my life. I still support women as human beings and want
mm,
equality for them. I don't have anything against them. I certainly don't want harm to come to them.
yeah. Yeah. I've had some. It's funny. Of my closest friends, the gender mix is always relatively even, despite the fact that sometimes I also sense or notice that sometimes it's like it's all men around. Just it's the gender thing is weird. If it's one-on-one type of thing and I look at my life, then the gender mix for my friends is somewhere in the middle. And but also each of my friends, it seems it's like kind of odd and randomized to an extent, but it's just it's because I'm a weirdo. You don't know what's going to happen or how that's going to manifest. But
Yeah.
if I'm going to an event or we're going to organize an event and we want a bigger group, a lot of times it's definitely majority guys. And it seems like there really is a gender divide because women are much more likely to be into social justice than men. And one of the reasons, I think this is really basic, men are told they're the oppressors and they get a lot of hostility and even abuse. So it's not really very tempting to become a social justice warrior as a man. Whereas women are sold a kind of tempting, come to the dark side. We have cookies. We call it victimhood. And so I think there, to some extent, there's certain people that are more attracted to it and some people are more pushed away. And I've had a really hard time, especially as a straight guy. I don't even want to bother with dating. I've dabbled here and there. It's not even that important to me. But the likelihood of me meeting a feminist woman when looking for possible partner or whatever, if I'm actually putting in any effort, it's almost like 99% in my experience. I don't I'm it's not even that important. But gender differences, I don't know. I guess it's
Yeah,
some mess we're navigating.
I don't think that's the most interesting part of a person, like
Yeah,
gender. Anyway,
it's
like
true.
that's why pronouns and trans and this, it just doesn't. If that's the most interesting thing about you, that's not much to build a connection on, to me.
Yeah.
And I find women, for me personally, I find women much more oppressive than men. So like, I'm sorry that women find men oppressive, but I find women oppressive as a male. I find all of their thousand invisible social rules oppressive. I find their heightened emotional needs that I can't meet because I don't even know what they are oppressive. Like the the expectations and the requirements of me I've, from women are much more oppressive and harder for me to meet than for men. I can just relax and be myself around most guys.
Yeah.
And with women, there's a lot of tiptoeing on eggshells. That and it's the
Mhm.
feeling of oppression.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't tiptoe. I do find though that my natural propensity to adapt to the environment or just like respond to it as myself, that if I'm either in a social justice environment or if I'm in a female dominated environment, that sometimes I end up emphasizing comedy because it seems to break the tension.
Right.
And that's just something that I end up doing, so I'll be more comedic. And it's not easy to do. Social justice environments is really hard to find something that's funny that's not gonna offend them.
They don't
But
seem that much of a sense of humor
yeah.
to me.
Yeah, so it was really challenging, actually. Honestly, I think it really, strengthened my chops for social skill, but, I'll even if I'm not like, I don't have anything really funny to say, I'll just default to being kinda goofy and chilling out because that's the only response I can find to deal with the fact that they're gonna have all of these miscellaneous rules that I'm not aware of, and I'll never predict it in advance, and a lot of times they won't even tell me because it has to be unspoken, and it's not worth my time to spend too much time focusing on that unless if it's a really close friend, I'm gonna support them through a hard time, anxiety, whatever it is, but there's a time and a place for that, and I don't know. I mean, we were talking today in Counterweight. Shout out to Counterweight, by the way. If people don't know about it, or if you need a reminder, that's Helen Pluckrose's support group that's becoming more solidified. They have an official website now. I think it's counterweightsupport.com.
I
And
will
you
put
can,
the link in the YouTube comments if
yeah,
anyone's interested.
yeah, so that's how me and Jeff met, and it's actually I really like the group. To each their own. Not everyone's gonna like it, but I've been doing pretty well there, um, and you're not gonna like everybody, but it is a support group for people that have been negatively affected by social justice, um, and that's how me and Jeff met, and we're starting to find slowly but surely the right people to connect with and build our little community. But that's why I brought it up originally. Is we were a couple of us that people that I had really good connections with recently. We're talking, and through Jeff that I met through some of Jeff's groups. Jeff, you could plug that in a second if you want, or reference if you want. But
Oh yeah, I will.
yeah, let me get this thought formed cohesively. But Uh, a couple of us were really enthralled with the idea of leaving behind our local areas, especially if we're in major cities, and charting into the unknown and finding something new. It's kind of related to the theme of this podcast. So I'm going to get a camper van. I'm just going to explore other areas. I'm sick of the cities here that I'm from. I've tried too long. I need to break out of a rut and find something new and see what's out there and accept what opportunities there are instead of trying to create an opportunity where there is none. And so we were really excited about that recently, a bunch of us. So I don't know why I was reminded of that, but now it's here, the theme. You reminded me of that for some reason, of just like this growing theme of people that want to explore new territories, new paths, new possibilities.
Well, my probably one of my biggest passions is community building. I've been doing it my whole life. I've started so many groups. I was a meetup organizer. I have an online group community I've started now that's been going for a while. It's called the Back Porch. I put it in the chat room. We're a drop-in Zoom. We're usually there from morning to pretty late at night, and people can drop in and talk and socialize. We play games. We watch movies. We listen to music. We also have peer support if you need to talk, or we have peers available that can go in a breakout room with you and help you process or talk or listen. And so I'm also observing in some of these other communities, particularly the social justice or the anti-critical social justice communities that are starting to form. And it is this sense of community I found can be very healing and very transformative if it's healthy and authentic. And those are the type of communities that I like to help form. I'm Cajun. We're just natural community builders. There's nothing we like more than to get a bunch of people together and have a good time. And I've just been
Yeah.
doing that my whole life.
Yeah,
And so I'm
barbecue.
extending that to Zoom and to these online platforms. And I'm really pleased with the connections that I see forming. And I think I'm very optimistic about where this has the potential to go.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah, I'm really excited. And it's I think that me and you have different strengths and then some significant overlap. And despite some of the uphill battles you seem to have, which a lot of us do, I still think you're way better at actually community building in a way that works than I am. Most of my stuff, like to this day, it's so frustrating because it really means that after a good 10 years of my best efforts, I don't have things to show for it that can be seen as successful and concrete. And that's part of the reason that I'm not interested in success, or I see sometimes it gets really rigid. People get stuck in like a stereotype or a mythical or a myth of success that's just too rigid, and they're trying to get rid of all the bad parts of life and the ugly, unfortunate things and their failures. And it's just life is so much more flexible than that. And I'm really focusing on quality of character no matter what happens. So I guess you could say that's internal locus of control. And I just am not very enthralled with any particular story of success. Like a couple of my friends were hanging around today and they were like, "What's up, man?" I was like, "Oh, we're launching our debut of the podcast." And one of them's like, "Let me get you on Snapchat, man. Here's a beer. Hold a beer. And we're going to make it look like you're drinking." I'm like, "Okay, I don't drink beer." And he's like, "We're going to make you famous." And he's like, "You want to get an audience, right?" I'm just like, "I don't care." Honestly, at the end of the day, I actually really don't care. I'm having a good time with Jeff, and we're going to do something cool regardless of the size of the audience we have.
Two so far.
Yeah. Yes.
But
I wonder
that's
who
okay.
wonder who it is that joined. It's probably people we
Uh,
know, like our friends or something.
and don't feel too. I don't have success either. Like I'm in the same place with you. I'm constantly getting fired from jobs. I'm constantly getting kicked out of social groups or having to leave social groups. And I
Mhm.
don't consider myself. I don't have a lot to show for success either. And I'm fine. I think it is that internal. Like I'm happy with myself inside. I have success on my terms that I'm satisfied with. I've done all the things I've wanted to do in life. I've had a ton of memories and experiences. The people I've gotten to connect with. I've
Yeah.
had so many blessings in my life, and
Mhm.
I feel successful as a human being on terms that are important to me that reflect my values. But I don't have social success either or outside success. I pretty much look like a loser on paper.
Yeah, I it's weird because the things that'll stand out to people if they're just kind of taking a basic look at my life, they would say, especially if they're emphasizing the last year of my life or whatever, they might say, "Yeah, I look like a loser on paper," or whatever. It's a little strange because, and this is the nitty gritty of how confusing and weird it can be once you've been like canceled or like fired from a job for this kind of stuff. Is like my resume still looks really good, and I'm getting perceived as overqualified in some sense, and it's getting very strange to navigate this because I basically left my old youth network and I kind of dabbled in some jobs in youth work that were maybe removed from it, but those ended up being in the interview they're pandering to social justice, and the guy that's like a white guy and he's just like, and I definitely need to be aware of my privilege, and I'm just like, you're going to throw me to the wolves if I take this job. So I left that industry in a very concrete way after that situation happened, and I'm trying to deepen some of my research and write a book now and see where the hell that leads me. And that's why that book, one of the reasons that book came together, just as an example, the types of projects and purposeful action you pursue changes its format significantly if you shift away from pursuing success or pursuing a role that's in an established community and hierarchy, and you go maybe more on the fringe or individual kind of no man's land side of things like I'm doing. And one of the things that happens is, instead of getting a role that's in an organization, I literally have an opportunity right now I could apply for and have a decent chance of getting a program manager to design a new youth empowerment program. It's verbatim relevant to everything I'm doing right now. So it's like, oh, this would be a dream. But no, I know the context of what's going on here. I know that that is going to be tying me right back into that social justice if I even wasn't tarnished in the interview or whatever, and they find out the truth that like I was ostracized. So that's not for me. And so now I'm taking the same archetypes, the same universal values, and the same thing I want to tackle in the world, and I'm going to write a book. I think a lot of people do that. They end up writing these books, these nonfiction, especially nonfiction, fiction to an extent, when it's almost like the world's not ready for what they need to give. So they're like, all right, I'm just going to write this down before I die. So then when I'm out of here, the next generation 200 years from now can discover it. And just, okay, just pull a Van Gogh or something.
Well,
I don't
don't
know.
pull too much for one.
Just pull on my ear.
Yeah, just tug on it. Well, we've been yakking for over an hour. Do we want to, if there's anyone out there, do we want to maybe try
Yeah.
to take guests or callers?
Yeah,
If anyone wants to hop on the Zoom and participate in the discussion and you're out there, you can comment in the YouTube chat or send me a message if you're one of the people I know personally. And
same.
because the idea in the future with these podcasts is to have a guest on and talk for a while and then invite two or three other people to join the podcast and interact with the guest and the rest of us and have a little group discussion going.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I was paying attention to the time, but it seems that for the most part it's mainly me and you today, but out of our two people that are supposedly watching, if they're
hey,
actually
two
here,
people
hi, they're a mystery.
and four
Wait,
subscribers. Thank
if
you.
what if do you have the live stream open right now? Because I
Yeah.
opened it so I could view the comments. Does that potentially mean nobody's watching and it's me and you? I don't know.
There were two for most of the episode. It went down to one briefly. So I think it's
Hmm.
safe to assume there were maybe a couple of people watching. And I know we're also streaming this in the back porch Zoom. So there may be people there watching as a group, but it would only register as one
Wait,
individual.
so you found a way for people to watch the live stream in the back porch?
Yeah, they're just sharing the screen. So
Oh, okay.
someone's pulling it up on their end and sharing it in a
That's really
breakout room
cool.
with whoever wants to watch it.
Yeah. We're getting like layers of Zoom mazes now.
But I promoted it on Discord, Twitter,
Yep.
Facebook, mainly
Wow.
those
I
places.
promoted a little bit towards the end here, but I there one of the reasons I didn't promote too much is that I just know that it's a lot of work if you're trying to build those numbers at all. If we got 50 viewers this first episode, I would have been like that's amazing.
I'm
It's
happy with that too, whoever you are.
yeah, I mean if you had all those people in the same room, that's basically us giving us like a speech, a presentation or whatever. But
And I enjoy
um
talking. Like I really enjoy our conversations. So I'm up for keeping this going regardless.
yeah,
I'm not a numbers person really anyway. So I just
same.
I do it for the joy of doing it.
Yeah. That's what matters. That's where the honestly, that is where the magic is. I really okay. So people have made some comparisons as there's the conversations about social media has become a very prominent thing of the negative effects of social media and blah blah blah. And they're saying one of the statements is that social media is to social interaction the way porn is to sex. So it's just like a junk food filler, and over time it just it's
I don't
like
find it that way.
I mean, you can use social media in a useful and positive way. It's a tool. I'm not very negative about it, but a lot of people who get addicted to it and they use it poorly are using it to replace real interactions in real community. And I think in a similar way, that's what happens with the desire for fame. And that when people want to be famous, what they really want is the opportunity to be in a really meaningful community, but they don't necessarily understand that because their value system is a little out of whack. And it's because so many of us are isolated. And I find a lot of people just devalue those that are directly around them. And they're like, it's not worth it. But sometimes you got to start with the BS and the crappy situation and what limited options you have to make something better. So the community can grow from that actually is meaningful and is worth it. I don't know. You think you're gonna try and get somebody, a couple of people or so, or on the show?
I'm posting it and seeing what happens.
Sure.
But I'm very happy with our conversation. I think it was a good episode one.
Yeah. Well, it appears that it didn't quite go according to plan here.
I didn't expect it to. That's why I don't plan. I'm not a big planner
Well,
because
so me and
every
you,
time I
yeah,
try it, I can't make it happen. But
yeah,
next week we have a potential guest lined up. So eventually, some point, we will have actual guests.
right. Yeah, we were supposed to have a guest today, and that didn't work out. So we had to kind of come up with whatever we were going to talk about today on the fly. And yeah, I think it's a good episode one. Mm.
So
But in the future, it would be so cool if, as people start connecting more, to really encourage people to bring announcements with them. So
mhm.
it's not just we're talking ideas, but we get to hear like the news in their lives of, hey, maybe newcomer, and they want to hop on at the end or something, and they say, hey, I'm a professional in this field, blah blah blah. Social justice is affecting me negatively, and I was able to form a support group, and just getting like news pieces like that of people telling their personal stories and saying this is what's going on and here's what I want to do and this is maybe what I could use help with. It makes it so much more tangible and actionable. We can like, all right, we got something we can do.
Yeah, I like that. I want it to be more participatory anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me,
Yeah.
the podcast is not its own end. It's a stepping stone to community building. So
Yes.
whatever audience or community develops from this podcast, I want ways for it to continue within the podcast and outside of the podcast. We have a Discord
Mm-hmm.
server. We have the back porch Zoom. So there's opportunities to continue the connection and the community element of it
Yep.
beyond just the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, when this is reminding me of it amusingly, when Joe Rogan went solely to Spotify, we lost the YouTube comment section in all his podcasts, like the future ones, and then a lot of the old ones were taken down too. And vast majority of us who were really into that were just like, I miss our comments community. So it was such a powerful thing that literally the comments section was like maybe 30 to 50% of the power of the Joe Rogan sensation, and it was the sense of that community. And so I guess if I could, if anybody's feeling they're missing out in their Joe Rogan comment section, please come to our comment section.
Come
If
to
you want to do all
ours.
your Joe Rogan memes here, that's off topic. Joe the Gorilla Rogan, all his like nicknames they give him.
Those are my favorite podcasts, the ones that go live and you get to comment and interact not only with the podcaster, but I love interacting with the other commenters. It's
Yeah.
you never know who you're going to meet.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, there's one of my favorite podcasts YouTube channels that I've been with them since 6,000 subscribers, and sometime last year they just exploded. They're almost at 40,000 now, and so I guess you could say they're still relatively small, but I love what they're doing. It's Unsafe Space with Carter and Carrie, Carter, Laren, Carrie Smith. You just search up that name, you'll probably find them on
I
YouTube.
can
But
put it in the
yeah.
chat.
Oh no, my tapestry. There it goes.
Ah,
There's the chaos. I tried. I'm gonna be using tons of tape. I can't. I gotta find a new way to get it to stay up. But yeah, that's one of my favorite little hubs for communities, unsafe space. But I think like me and you, Jeff, are really trying to push the boundaries of community so that it really is like going deeper into that interactivity and inspiring
that's my
people.
norm. You say pushing the boundaries, but that's my
Well,
default. It might be boundaries for other people.
yeah, I mean more so of like what's out there in the public. We're almost using a podcast in a way of like being literally a community, like really emphasizing that and like encouraging people to bring their good news, their bad news. This is what I'm dealing with. Is tying online into real lives locally. Ooh, that's kind of cool. My hand is going. Okay, I got distracted. The camera's like, whoa. Anyways, technology. But are we? I don't see anybody around the to join us.
You want to call it an episode?
Do you want to share anything in our last official 9 minutes that is prominent or seems
Let me
really?
think. You talked about counterweight. I'm trying to think of the community. Like, if viewers are interested in further interaction, I'm trying to think of where they can find us or communities that we're involved in. And you talked about counterweight. I have a Discord server. We have an email. You can email us at jeffandnemo@gmail.com. It's the email attached to our YouTube channel, and we can give you links or resources through there.
Mhm.
I talked about the back porch. I'm usually on there. You can find me there throughout the day. We have a Facebook group you can join as well. Critical Therapy Antidote. If you're a mental health professional or a client or interested in the impact of critical social justice on the mental health field, you can join Critical Therapy Antidote. We do a lot of Zooms and activities. That's another good place to find people.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
it's crazy. Jeff, you're like crazy active with these different groups that you're starting to build.
I have others. Those are the ones that are social justice related. Also, if you're, I'm, the term is twice exceptional, but it's gifted slash neurodiversity, like autism, ADHD, blah blah blah. It's intense and creative adults. There's a community called Embracing Intensity for adults like me, and that's another community I interact in a lot that I can recommend.
Now, that sounds
And
like that'd be a great place for me.
yeah, you should. We have weekly. I mean, every couple of weeks, she has either a guest speaker or we have a group call on Zoom, and that's a cool place to check out if you think you're twice exceptional or bright and creative or intense.
Yeah.
And I'll put Critical Therapy Antidote, and I will put Embracing Intensity in the
Mhm.
YouTube comments.
Awesome. Uh, do you want to start putting links in the comments and I can play us out with a song? I don't know if will we be able to hear it even? I don't even know.
Is it one of your songs?
Yeah,
Um,
doesn't I don't have to.
Try it. If you play it, well, you could share sound too through Zoom.
Can you can hear me, so you should. This is my guitar's next to my microphone.
Oh, you want to play it live?
I was just meant like I would that roll credits. You
Yeah,
have to like put all those links in the comments,
I
so
think
I'll
that's a great
entertain the
idea. I'm getting the last link in there right now, and then
yeah, I could entertain the audience with the are you just almost done already?
yeah, play. And if you're a musician or a performer or poet or writer or any kind of artist, we have music night. I mean, open mic night on the back porch every Friday from 4 to 6 Pacific time. So you can come join us and share your work. We have a good time.
Yeah.
Okay, it's great, everyone. Thank you
Yeah.
and take care. Nemo's gonna play us out.
Oh, shall I all
Yeah, if you
right.
want.
I don't know, maybe on theme. I could do one called It's Just a Game. Should I do that one? Sure, why not? You can hear my guitar, right? And it's okay and okay. Well, we'll go with it. Sometimes bridges are burned, match lighting up the sky. No lesson was learned, so you're starting over again. Resetting your life, but we haven't got much time now to figure all this out. Ooh, yeah, and you break out of your shell, explore all the world's entropy. You're running in the field in circles again. In the nighttime, with the moon as your lifeline, the water calls your name, brings you down to your knees, lying in deep dark dirt. Flat ground and flat sky is the reason why you're here. The wise man dies, the young man tries to live out his dreams. It's all just a game now. It's all just a game now. It's all just a game now. So why fight when you can play? Why run when you can seize the day? Why fight when you can play? Why give in when you can learn to stay? Stay right here, it's gonna be okay. Stay right here, it's gonna be okay. Stay right here, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay.
Thank you, thank you.
It was pretty fun. My tapestry just totally falling apart in the background as I'm doing that.
Very appropriate. I'm glad it did. Well, I had a blast. I think it was new and chaotic. I hope.
Yeah,
Hopefully
newly
you
chaotic.
enjoyed it, and any future people that rewatch it, I hope you get something out of it, and send us an email.
Hmm. Newly chaotic, and maybe when we get more people around, we'll have the world involved at that point.
Yay.
Yeah, man. Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate you.
Okay, same here, and I'll see you at the next one. Take care.